I'm live. Hello, 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 hello. So I have been having some technical difficulties. Wave your hand in front of the camera or German so people can hear that you are with me and we are live. So German is in the studio with me, and I also have Louis who is moderating as well as Jermaine. You want to set the let me just turn this down. Yeah, set Louis as. So I don't know who is on yet. But yeah, we're having some technical difficulties. Imani Williams is on. Hi. How are you? Moya is on. Hi, Moya. So guys, you see me looking at different cameras because our different devices, because I'm fine seeing the comments and I'm able to see the comments a little closer to this device that I'm on here, right? Tisha is on. Hi, Tisha. How are you? Cheers. We're on for the second week of our YouTube live session. And we have a very important topic to talk about. Now, this topic was shared by a Miss Smith. She wanted to talk about how we navigate. I'm sorry, guys, give me a second. Hold on there. I don't know what happened to my notes. It just went a while ago. The topic is how to communicate. Appropriately. But it seems like, all right, guys, give me a second. I don't know what happened to my thing. It just decided that it was meant to come off here. Bear with me, guys. I'm trying to find my notes. I don't know what happened to it a while ago. How to communicate appropriately. My notes just went. Well, you know, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. So, Dawn is on. Moya, Miss Williams. We are going to get into it. And as usual, I want us to be talking. I want to hear what you have to say. I want you to chime in on communication because everybody has their own. Hi, Donnie. Everybody has their own way of communicating, and you can always share your own techniques that you use to communicate and to communicate well. So how do we communicate appropriately? I don't have anybody that's going to come jump on and pray. So to do live so that we can pray. So I'm going to have to open in prayer. So let us pray. So Father, we are just so grateful for another week. Lord, thank you for Miss Smith who decided to give us this topic so that we can talk, so that we can become more abreast as how communication work, so that we can be better at communication. I thank you for every person that would watch this live and every person that will watch it on the rebound later. I thank you so much, mighty God, for this time that we are able to help each other, to support each other as we grow and develop. In Jesus' name, amen. So as Louis says, remember to like, subscribe, and share. Tin is here. Hi, Tinil. So Tinil is here as well. So you can make her a moderator. Hi, Tin. How are you? Tin is always coming from work and she's not feeling well today either. I know that for sure. So thank you guys for coming on. And as Louis says, share. Remember to like, turn on the notification bell so that you know that I'm live. Remember to do that, right? Let's talk. How to communicate appropriately. Now, we take communication for granted a lot of time. We often take communication for granted. Yes, it's the core of everything, right, Dawn? Communication is the core of everything we do, our relationships, how it works, and even how we see ourselves. We communicate daily, but how often do we consider how we communicate? How often do we think about ways that we can communicate better, right? I want us to start by talking about listening. And remember, guys, I want you to say hello to me so I know who's on. This is not like Instagram, I can't say everybody. So just say you're in the house and you're chatting with me. I'd love to have those names. So just type it in the chat so I know. And I want to also have you communicating with me. So that we're having that dialogue. So let's start with listening. We always talk about communication. It is the key to every relationship. It's the key to life. But the real key in communication is listening. Not just hearing words, because a lot of times we just hear words with the intent not to understand what's being said, but to respond. But it's not just about hearing the words. It's not just about hearing the words. And it's very easy to rush through conversations because we focus on what we want to say as opposed to how we communicate to another person. And Don says it begins with actively listening. So communication begins with actively listening. And listening and hearing is two different things. We have to listen, like really use this tool that God has given us to listen to each other when we speak. We want to slow down when we're listening, right? And Don, thank you so much, guys. Remember, I don't know everything, so we still need to have this conversation. So you share what you believe can be good and keys to good communication, right? We want to slow down when we listen. We want to create space for authentic connection. Authentic, real, true connection with me and Dawn. We're having a conversation, but then there is a connection. It's not like I'm just sitting there and you are just talking at me. But there's a connection, and that is how communication works. Communication works when there is a connection. A lot of us don't have that, that compassion or that connection or that emotional availability or intellect to be able to know how to communicate. Communication is a big deal. It's a big deal. And I want us to really unearth it today. So hear what all 11 or 13 of you on today. Let's talk about what you feel communication is. Don says the space in which communication takes place must also be a safe space, a very safe space. And Louis says listening is voluntary. Hearing is not. It requires you to want to have the conversation. That is why you can't force people to communicate with you. All right? And I wouldn't necessarily, say force. I believe communication is it's supposed to be an agreed connection. That's why I said that we have to have authentic connection when we communicate. Thank you guys so very much for those points. Now, Proverbs 18:13, which is we don't go by what we think. We go by what the word says. That's where we get our intellect from. That's where we see how God says we are to communicate. Proverbs 18:13 says to answer before listening, that is a folly and shame. So a lot of times we answer without we even listen. You sometimes and we all do it. Let's be real now. Let's not pretend like we don't have these situations where we're talking to people and before them finish, thought drop in our minds. So before them finish, even we think out everything and we start to answer before we actually be listening to what they're saying. Yeah, Don says guilty. I'm guilty too, Don. And so I'm also learning too as I'm speaking to you about listening, because sometimes we can get very frustrated with each other and giving up on all these things when it's the fact that we have learned that art of communication, because communication is an art, right? So you see, listening well requires humility. If you're not humble, it is very difficult to have a conversation. So listening well requires humility and acknowledging that we don't have all the answers. That is okay. We don't have to have all the answers, but we must be humble enough to hear what the other person is trying to communicate. Right, Jermaine, you're in this room with me, and if I'm going to be talking at you and I'm not hearing what you're saying, then we can't communicate, right? Let them hear your voice, someone.
Yes, man, that's true.
That is true.
That is it.
So I have to listen to not just what Jermaine is saying, I have to listen to what he's not saying. Yeah? When we are too quick to speak, we miss the deeper meaning of what someone wants to share. And what is missing from our conversation is empathy. We don't empathize with each other. So listening with empathy, not just to respond, can be so healing. So I come to you and I'm like, Tennille, I keep mixing you up, this is you. And then I keep thinking it's somebody else. So that's Tennille's name there. But she said something and then the message was retracted. So you have to listen with empathy, right? And I have a lot to learn, and I'm sure a lot of us have a lot to learn when it comes to being empathetic. We are just very impatient at times, not listening to what we are saying to each other. The second piece in communication is how we say things. Not just what's said, but how it is said. And that's a lot for me to learn. Like, me still have to learn how me say when me I say no one, but how I say it. Sometimes how it come across to somebody can be hard or harsh in their mind. And so it's still a learning. Communication is something that you always have to learn, because you always have to learn how people communicate. Work in progress, says Dawn, and so am I. Thank you so much, Dawn. We don't feel alone over here. So thank you so much, right? So it's funny how the tone can change everything. The tone in what we say, right? Yeah, the tone, it can change everything. You can say something truthfully, but the message might be lost entirely if your tone is harsh. I've had that. I've had where I've said stuff, it's harsh. So it get lost on the individual because I'm not yet, I'm responding, but it can come across because of my own passion. Because I know that I'm a passionate person, right? Hey, Monique, how are you, mama? Right? And so I may be speaking to a friend, and how it comes across to that individual might be taken differently. So how our tone sounds, and sometimes even monotone. So it does not mean that we're responding, but we're monotonish when we're talking. We're not talking with any feelings. There's no connection. If I talk to somebody, you just feel like you're speaking to a board. You're not getting through to the individual at all, no matter what you do. There's just this block, and you're having the conversation, but it's just lost on what's happening, because the individual that you're having that conversation with could probably just be passive in terms of how they communicate. So they don't communicate with feelings or any form of emotion. And that feeling or emotion don't necessarily mean it means that it's a bad thing. So how we communicate is not just what we say, but how we say it. And you think about Jesus' approach and how he spoke to people a lot of time. The woman at the well, I mean, like, I'm going to go like real raunchy, patois right now, so the people them from foreign come on and understand myself, but me interpret it after. But he say the woman at the well did sit down. Jesus didn't know so she had 5 man. He did not say so you come here, come sit down at the well. I'm gonna say I have 5 man them. Yeah, and the one we have, the one there with is not your own. I'm just saying. But how he presented it to her, how he spoke to her, and how he was able to identify with what she was going through. You know, him said, but I have, you have a well, you can that me know what's going on in my life. I know exactly what's happening. But I must say that there's much so much of a better way for you to do it. And I know the person that you're with is not yours. And I know the history of your life. I mean, that's how him communicate the thing. So she before she even run go tell everybody that this man just come criticize her life. She run go say, I come see a man who tell me everything about my life. Come, I need to see this man. Yeah. And so therefore, he spoke with truth, but he did it with grace. So it is really the grace that is going to be necessary in the communication. Thank you so much for that, Monique. It's really, she said something about impatience. See? Right. And so you communicate, but you communicate with grace. We communicate, but we communicate with grace. We're communicating with grace. Dawn says the other person will always remember how we made them feel during communication. All right. And sometimes when you're communicating, it's as it says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And I love what Don said earlier. We are all a work in progress. We don't always realize the weight of our words or how much impact our tone can have on someone's heart. We don't always know. We're not always sometimes intentional either about how we speak to someone, right, guys? Thank you so much for in here and doing the communication. Thank you. So you don't always talking to a person. Sometimes your intentions towards them is not to be harsh or not to come across a certain way, but they receive it a certain way, right? And so communication has so many different parts to it and so many different things. We could talk for days, Don, about how this whole communication work. Think of it like planting seeds. You can plant good seeds, but you won't take root. It won't take root if it just thrown down carelessly. So if I come with a seed and I just throw down the seed carelessly, it will not take root. Many times I've had my clients say to me, oh, I'm doing this thing and I just hear you in my head, coach. I hear you over and over in my head. I hear you repeating something in my head, and I was going to make a certain decision. It was going to be a rush decision, and I just hear you repeating. You're in my head saying something. And I've also had that with friends. I might be having a conversation with, sharing something with them, and they may say to me, give me a little encouragement, and while I'm in the situation, I can hear them and the suggestion or advice that they are giving to me. When you plant gently and nurture it, it will grow. Once it is planted and nurtured, it will grow. Don't worry about it. If it's once you plant it, you leave it, you say what you have to say, and you leave it. Right? Tini said every day if I can't tell my aunties, Auntie won't say or do. Let me see it a little bit over here. Let's just say hello, danger waters. So you plant that, you nurture it so that it grows. Our words are like they either build people up or they tear them down. Even if we don't mean it, even if we just say the word and we don't mean it. The intent of why we say what we say was to kind of harm them, but that's what they receive from the conversation. So there's timing for communication. What we say, we don't have to always say it at that time. Like I have come to know that in my years of communicating and learning how to communicate, I have learned that there are things I want to say right now. Like I look at a situation and I'm getting a picture of the thing and I'm like, Holy Spirit, can I help me here to figure this out? And I hear not no. Don't say no. Leave it. And sometimes even in communication, it's really that I just go and I just pray. Yeah. Javoy Night. Thank you so much. That's so true. Thank you for that. Yes. And so you leave it, you hear, leave it. And sometimes even when you communicate to somebody and they're not hearing what you're saying, as Louis said earlier, they are not hearing what you're saying. Sometimes it just don't make any sense. It makes no sense saying what you're saying. You ever had a conversation and you've repeated yourself over and over to an individual about a particular issue, and it's almost like they don't hear it? It's because they just don't know how to have that conversation. They don't know how to communicate that conversation. And that becomes like a challenge to them. So instead of, you're trying to repeat yourself, believe it. Javoy says, I totally agree. Time and place for everything. Yes. Time and place for everything. There is a time and place for everything. And I love that. Thank you so very much for that. Right? Yeah, I don't know. I think it probably so I can still see the comments. Sorry. No, we don't often talk about timing. When we talk about communication, we talk about tone, and we talk about patience, and we talk about all those other things. But we don't normally sometimes talk about the timing to have a conversation. That's something that we don't talk about a lot. Michelle says, "Hey, Michibu, it's like we want to say it and we want to say it now, but sometimes it's better to wait." Dawn says, there's a space. There is a space to receive what is being said. Way that to Dawn, because sometimes we've been around, Michelle, Monique, we've been around, and we know sometimes you're having a conversation with somebody and they're just not going to hear it. They just want to believe whatever they want to believe. And there's nothing you say or do, right, Jermaine? Nothing you say or do is going to stop them from believing what they want. So even if you try to say to them, why that's
Yes, that's true.
yeah, it's like it don't make a difference, right? But we do often talk about timing and timing plays a huge role in our conversation, whether it is productive. And as Dawn says, there is a space to receive it. So sometimes you have to wait it out. Like, all right, it don't seem like, yeah. And Ecclesiastes 3 says there is a time to be silent, a time to speak. A time to be silent and a time for us to speak. So sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to pause. Yeah. Because in this world, we feel like I have to respond to something and I have to respond to it right now. Now, in my immature years, that was me. I would just, I need to say what I say, I can't sleep. I listen sit because now I have a nightmare. And then I found out like, yo, what me I say, and it's been taken the wrong way. My tone is off, how I come, the intent in what I have, because I have to share what I have to weigh everything in why I'm having that conversation. And so responding immediately, learn, leave it. It's wise sometimes to just step back, let my emotions settle, and then find that space where clarity and peace, especially in those emotionally charged situations, you step back and you wait and you say, all right, is because I've learned something from my pastor. that has stood out to me the most. One of it, Jermaine, is when I want to say something, is this beneficial to me or is it beneficial to the individual? Because most times we have selfish motives. We want things on our term. We want things our way. Yeah. So if it's not going to help the hearer, it makes no sense having the conversation because that conversation is just going to be about me. Yeah. And I've learned the hard way to have just let things slide and pray a little bit more about things than to speak about them.
Or even sometime during conversation, we
Mhm.
we take some time to
Mhm.
to hear the person, but we're not listening because we're waiting to respond.
Exactly. So we're not listening. We just know say me just want if you don't make a point, so I can't answer you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Tim says, I've learned to step back before making because I decisions because I'm not seeing it over there. Let me look at it right here. Because I may cause more damage than intended. Think we also need to be comfortable with a pace. So this thing is blocking
Yeah, because a logical pace.
to be at a logical, but think we also need to be comfortable with going at a logical pace. And that's very good. Yes, we have to be comfortable, right? Now, it's like cooking. When you're cooking, if you rush the process of the cooking, the meal won't come out right. So if I come now and I just want to cook the food quick and slam dash it and don't season it properly and don't make the season, I show it on the stove and say you have to prep and cook. Come and need to eat. Now I cannot eat the food because the food don't cook properly. It's the same thing in communication, right? Communication works the same way, Taking that time, taking that extra time can lead to more meaningful and effective conversations, right? Remember, guys, I want to hear you saying something to me. 17 people on. Who talks back to me, please? Tell me what you think and what have you learned over in your relationships about communication. Tell me what you've learned. Take extra time so that we can have meaningful conversation. Now, one of the other critical aspects of communication is clarity. And this is just my preference. I am a person who likes to communicate face to face. I don't like communication via text and WhatsApp. I don't. You see, in this new era of phone, people don't get to be people anymore. It's all about I just send you a message. I don't pick up the phone anymore and I don't call you. And there's no bonding because communication is going to require some level of bonding. You know how I'm speaking, my facial expression, I'm looking at you, I'm picking up stuff. And so I like a good conversation where we sit face to face and talk to each other. And that's why I'm a coach, because I love to sit down with my clients and spend the time on earth the things that needs to be unearthed. Clarity is very crucial. Now, Monique says, seek to understand. And then Jermaine here says the single biggest problem in communication is the illustration that has taken place illusion that has taken place. And this is by George Bernard Shaw. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion. So this is saying that I hear, but I just come up with what I think I hear. I don't clarify what I've heard. I just tell myself, say, this is what I've heard. I made my own perception. I perceive this is what is happening. This is how it sounds. but I don't get clarity, and clarity is very important when we speak, and that is why I'm not a great communicator. I don't not great. I'm not good with phone communication. I like to sit down and talk, and that has always been me. Even with phone, you dip on the phone, you talk. Sometimes you dip on your phone and you talk. You don't have no other option, so you talk. But I like to make time. Yes, let's go sit down. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. So when we speak, we need to be clear, but also compassionate in how we are speaking. We don't want to be passive aggressive. We don't want to just, this is what I'm saying, and be monotonish. Because remember, the tone is not just about being harsh, because we can be not harsh and seemingly gentle, but we just have a monotone. Really and truly, I just want this conversation to be over and done with. This is my stance on it. I really don't have anything else to say. I just want the conversation to be over and done with. Often we think we're being precise, but the other person may be hearing something completely different. So it's very important to ask questions. When we're communicating and somebody says something to us, we're gonna say, so what I'm hearing is this. And the person may say, no, that's not what I'm hearing. That's not what I'm saying. So it's very important to ask, am I being clear? Or how do you feel about this? And don't just ask it for asking sake. Just ask it because you really want to know. You really want to know what the other person is feeling. You really want to hear what the other person is saying. How do you feel about what's being said? Because what that does, it opens up a space for dialogue rather than leaving with any form of misunderstanding. And misunderstandings that's what steals relationship. Because we're not patient enough to really want to hear what we're saying.
So, question for you, Coach.
Yes.
That, what's your suggestion on having a middle ground for people with two different communication styles?
I totally believe in that. I totally believe in having that middle ground. To having that person that will come and mediate the conversation. And I don't somebody was telling me that they were mediating in a mediation with about 10 people. You can't mediate with 10 people. You can't. I don't even think you only mediate with 2 at a time, because it's really difficult to hear, because you are said something and you are shouting so nobody's hearing what anybody's saying. It's all about emotions. So Michelle says to choose my words carefully depending on the person, because sometimes it may come across offended. Yes. Oh Lord. May I run joke with him? Me like call her him. May I run joke with him? And it would just start to call up. So what I've learned to do is now to say, so that make you feel that way, my son. No, and she would have said, Lord, sis, no, I'm not so fickle now, because I know this is how she has communicated in the past, and I've learned her way of communication. I said, that make you feel bad, oh, my son, right there. So, and she would say yes or no. If it is that I said something and it's wrong, I just apologize. And if I need to clarify, I know ask her the question in a different way so that I can get clarity from it.
So basically, communicate how to communicate well.
Yes, communicate well, Jeremy. Well said. So October, David says, yes, that's to ensure what you are trying to communicate, what is received. Very well, October. Thank you so very much for that. You want to make sure that whatever the person is saying, that you are communicating to them how they communicate. It's a big deal, and we continue to learn each other. If we really want to have great relationships, then clarity doesn't mean just being blunt or insensitive, though. It's not about just being blunt or insensitive. It's about finding a balance, speaking the truth, but doing it in love. So the scripture talks about that. We have to do it in love. And Dawn says, I revisit the conversation to make sure I understood clearly by discussing what was told to me in my own words. This way, we are on the same page. Love that, B. Love that. Revisit the conversation. So, I mean, in the real world, in textbook, this is how we want it to go. In the real world, it don't always work like this. But it's good sometimes to revisit the conversation, to come back and say, hey, I said something the other day, how do you feel about it? Or, if you see somebody acting a little funny, you want to ask them if they're okay. Sometimes, it's not all the time, because sometimes, we're wrestling with all sorts of other different spirits. And so you can't always feed into those spirits. But there are times when you can ask a question or revisit the conversation, as Dawn says. I always say that clarity is kindness. Yeah, clarity is kindness. And for me, one of my languages or way that you speak to me, like one of my love languages, is just sitting to listen and ask me if this is what I said. Yeah, man. I may have one or two friends, but man, when they come to speak to him, them know so they're going to sit down and they're going to ask me the question and they're going to clarify if this is what they are saying. I love that way of communication. When we're clear, we give others the gift of understanding, understanding us, understanding how we communicate, understanding us better. It saves it saves us from all this confusion and unnecessary conflict down the road. It saves us from the unnecessary conflicts down the road. Communicate and ask questions, and we're clear and we're doing everything to make sure we're hearing the other person, then it really does a world of a good. So Tasha says, hey Tasha, how are you? Tweety Mills, you see when we see you here, yes, Tweety, I see you, darling. In the building, oh, so Tweety, why you come so late? I'm looking out for you, Tweety. Why come so late, girl? So October says, and don't be afraid to go back and seek clarity and also to apologize. An apology won't kill us. We need to normalize giving and receiving sincere apology. October, I think I like you. Yes, very, very, very much so. Yes, man. Don't be afraid. Sometimes look at pride. Stand up. I now go back. Because I don't want them boof me. Or I don't want this. Or I don't want that. Whatever is there, the underlying thing. Don't be afraid that to go back and clarify. I believe that when you really value a relationship or value a person, you want to hear what they're saying. And that is how you show value to an individual. Petey Mills in the house. That is how you show value. You're interested in what the person is saying. You're interested in how the person is communicating to you. So another important aspect of communication is conflict. Let's talk about it. We've talked about conflict in the past and how we deal with conflict. And the conflict happens, but how we handle conflict reveals how much who we are as a person. Because if I want to make it better, I'm going to seek to talk to that individual. I'm not just going to shove my shoulder and say, I can't bother with them, or I can't bother with this, and those things are things that we do. And I'm not going to talk about, when I say things that we do, I'm not talking about those people who don't know any better. Talking to people who say we're Christian. We got church, they are church lifting up holy hands, and we worship whatever. We're not interested in understanding each other. We're interested in just hearing what we have to say, and that is it. We need to cut out that culture. We need to cut that culture out, because what that does, it shows the character, that type of person I am. It's not showing the character of the other person, it's showing the character, the type of person I am. So we love to come, and the first thing we do, we want to defend ourselves. But what if we shifted our mindset of resolving rather than winning? A lot of us, communication in conflict is all about winning. But shifting that mindset to resolving. Let us resolve the issue. Let us find a common ground. Let us work through this. In a moment of tension, it's easy to feel like the other person is the enemy and we start attacking each other. But remember, the goal should be understanding. We're trying to understand each other instead of I'm now accusing you. I find that using I feel statement instead of you always dynamic of a conversation. So I found that I feel like this is how I feel instead of saying that this is what you're doing. Because I can feel a certain way, but it doesn't mean that this is what you're doing. So instead of saying that I'm saying to you, this is what you're doing, and we're all a working process. Instead of I've talked it and have it all good and well. No, somebody clears throat. That's somebody up there, then clear them throat. But I'm saying, you know, I've seen some things coming up at the top, Jay. There's the first time like at the top of up there, but they're not. I can't see them in the comments. So much to learn about YouTube, guys. Yeah, right. So, you don't want to say, Tamelia always and do this to always and do that to always. You want to create space for the other person to see your perspective other than trying to attack the individual or the individual feeling like you're attacking them. Tasha says, there is a model I believe about the I statement. I'd love for you to expound on that. Like, give me a little bit more juice there, Tash. Yeah. Because this is, I'm feeling, but it don't mean that my feeling is your feeling. I feel. I'm taking ownership. You see, when, and I know that, a lot of times we talk about how we feel, and there's a space there where we need to balance, because, we can feel so much that we feel nothing really, but we just talk about how we feel. And there's a place for feeling and taking responsibility for how I feel. So when I say I feel like, it's really me taking responsibility for how I feel, as opposed to saying you always, because now what I'm doing is accusing you of something. So I just said I feel like, right? Timila's taught me that. October says, if we are winning the argument and losing a relationship as a result, I am really not winning. Is it really winning though? Am I really winning? October, we're not really winning. It looks like winning, but it's not winning. We've won that argument, but we have lost that relationship. Again, it's how you value, it's how we value each other. Because sometimes we really don't value each other. We don't value how we feel or how the other person feel. We don't. Jesus loves me says, hey, my love, Pat, how are you? It's been a while, girl. Is it feeling based on fact or emotions? So when you are feeling a way, it will never be facts. So don't base your feelings on facts. Your feelings are just emotions that cannot be the thing that you use to rectify any situation. That is just your feelings. It's just your perspective on a thing because of how you feel. It will not ever be the truth. It's not going to be based on facts. Facts is going to be based on when two persons start talking. And instead of I tell you I'm feeling a certain way, you say I mean it this way, and I don't take it to say, okay, that is how you feel. Or you say, oh, that is what you mean. Oh, I'm sorry, I took it the wrong way. And there's a lot of times that I've taken things the wrong way. I personally taken things the wrong way. Somebody says something, I took it the wrong way. It doesn't necessarily mean that's what the person was saying. So we're coming down to the end of our session because I really didn't want to go to an hour. But lastly, we need to learn to adapt. Adaptability. This is something we often overlook. We don't know how to adapt. Some people communicate in different ways. What works for one person may not work for another person. And so part of being a good communicator is learning to adapt, speaking more direct or being more patient, as Monique said earlier. Adapt to the individual. Adapt in your relationships to each other. And again, that is if you really value your relationship. Communication is not one size fits all. It's about meeting people where they are. Just as much as we would want them to meet us where we are. So communication is about giving and taking. It's not just about me receiving. It's about giving and taking. It's not just about us, oh, me feel and me, and I. It's about let me hear what you have to say. Let us both have this conversation. Let's talk about it together. I love a good conversation. I listen. And my friends will tell you, we talk for hours. Because we need to clarify this. We need to know how it works. We need to know what's at it. Yeah, man. Tasha says, Coach, YouTube said my explanation too long. YouTube, say YouTube wants a lick. What it means say too long? You should have break it up in a 2 parts. Because I want to see it. I wanted to see it. You should just go part 1 and then part 2. Right? But, guys, it's not a one size fits all. We have to learn each other, learn how each other communicate, learn how each other think, see from the eyes of the individual, right? And oh God, she says she don't know how she going to manage to type over everything. All right, how we're going to do it then is that when we post this live, so it gone. I only hope you can copy it and put it somewhere. Because when we post this session, you can always share it in the comment section, right? Right, Jeremy? Yeah. So when this is posted, Tash, you just go and post it in the comment section. I want to see it. So, and I will respond to it. Dawn says role reverse. And Michelle says exactly communicate. It's not a one size fits all. So guys, this has been my second edition on YouTube Live. I'm loving this kind of vibe. I'm loving this kind of interaction and connection. I'm loving how, we're flowing, and helping each other to grow. And I'm grateful to have had this conversation. Dawn says, but you guys can read up on Google, really interesting search, I feel statements. So, Dawn, yes, Tasha, you're copying out right here now. I want you to share it. We're not Googling anything. Come, then you come in here and ready to tell us what you want to say yourself for Googling. Tasha, may I ask you to share a few of that I statement? We would love to hear it. Dawn says, Tasha laugh. Try putting yourself in the other person's shoe. Let's do that. Let's do that. I leave that with you as the last comment, and I'm going to wait for Tasha to come and just share her comments. You see, one go down it's too hot. And why turn on that heat? Yes, I'm hot. But yeah, that's the end. She says, all right. Thank you very much, Tash. So appreciate it, love. We learn from each other. So next week, Friday, God's willing, I'll be here and we'll be talking on another interesting topic. Let me tell you what that topic is, because you guys have shared topics with me. And remember, you can always go into my DM and share other topics that you want to talk about. We don't have to call your name, and even if I call your name, I might call just your last name. And other people know, I don't know, or name Smith. They could have searched and say a whole lot of people named Smith, but our Smith. But our next topic is how to maintain the right balance in, or did I do that already? I think I did that. Oh no, I did that already in on the live. We're gonna talk about relationships. I did that on Instagram live. So our next topic is relationship. Mr. Carl wants us to talk about relationships. So we're going to talk about relationships. All right. We're going to talk about the value of relationships and how important it is for us to have relationships. My friends say, yeah, once that's my friend, that's my friend. I can say, let me see, right? You're on great course, big up yourself, my friend. Thank you. Thank you. She's saying, all my foreign people, she's just giving me a big up, a high five. Great job, Sim. In other words. But thank you guys. Thank you for joining. For those who stayed, thank you so much. And we'll do this again next week, Friday. God's willing, we're going to talk about relationships. I want you to give Jermaine some hearts, because if you're never in here tonight, I'm going to know how to manage. I really thank God for this young man. Don't leave out him. He's dear for me. We are going to go places. Yeah, man, I'm soon see. Man, we're going to go to Farin and all these places. Good day, everything, don't it? That is it. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Love you all. Take care, and I'll see you again next week. Ta-ta. Monique says, bless you.